Hey, how you doing? I'm Adam Post. Publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, publisher of College of the Dead, publisher of the upcoming Mermaids, and G.I. Jackrabbits. And so I published a lot of comic books through comic book stores using Diamond and even a couple of other distributors who sold comic book stores on a non-returnable basis. Now my focus is 100% crowdfunding with Comicsgate, direct to consumer. And this is an interesting tweet. Peter just shared some. Peter Simeti, publisher of Alterna Comics. People love Peter. And Peter just shared this internal message he got from Diamond about payments. Diamond Comic Distributors is the #1 comic book distributor, the really only comic book distributor to comic book stores. And they announced last week that they were having payment problems and cash flow problems, and as a result of a lot of stores, basically most comic book stores being shut down, and that they wanted to, they needed to suspend payments. So we're going to go over, this is kind of an interesting update from Peter. He raises a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions. This is a little, the way this is structured is a little unusual to me. I'm going to go over it in detail. I think you're going to find it really interesting if you're interested in comic books and comic book stores for sure. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe. Click the bell for notifications so you don't miss these kinds of videos and a lot more. Also, keep an eye out. College of the Dead is going to, we got 16 hours left. This has gone really, really well. I'm really excited about it. Just keep an eye out for it. Go ahead and back it if you haven't backed it already. College of the Dead. Share the link. It's a huge help. So what is Peter talking about here? So Peter's saying he got this update from Diamond regarding payments to vendors and suppliers. Vendors and suppliers are the same thing. So this is about Diamond's message. They sent an update. It's actually a pretty quick update. I'm pretty impressed that they did send an update right away like this. I'm glad that they're kind of informing people of what their status is, although it's really an incomplete status. So it's an update. Peter's saying it looks like they need to hunker down for 5 months till payments are received in full. And what he's referring to is Diamond's notice last week saying, hey, we are not going to be paying out payments to our suppliers because of cash flow problems and related to all the comic book stores closing all at once. And Peter's also saying no word still on the cancellation or adjustment of prior or fewer purchase orders or a timetable on receiving new items. What Peter's talking about there is comic book publishers, when they work through Diamond and sell direct on a non-returnable basis to stores like Peter and many other publishers do, even Marvel and DC and Image Comics, those publishers get purchase orders, and the purchase orders are basically a collection of all the orders of what all the stores say they want to buy and they're willing to buy on a non-returnable basis. Then they get collected and they put into one order to purchase the comics from the publisher. And the publisher takes that information and says, okay, you guys want whatever, 18,000 copies of this, pretty rare, 11 copies of that, happens sometimes, so then the publisher knows they need to get organized to print up and distribute copies. So there's multiple months that are already in place for comics that were supposed to ship in April, comics that were supposed to ship in May, comics that were supposed to ship in June, and even coming up on now, figuring out, well, what comics does a publisher want to commit to publishing in July? That, Diamond has yet to comment on that. But that said, this is an interesting update from Geppi's company, Geppi Family Enterprises. Geppi Family Enterprises is the main company that owns a few different operating businesses of Steve Geppi's. He is a multimillionaire, and multimillionaires do things like that. So what they're saying is, due to COVID-19's dramatic impact on businesses around the globe, Steve Geppi and his leadership team are working nonstop in concert with expert consultants and their publisher partners, the big publishers like Marvel and DC, to safeguard the comic industry's future. Thousands of retailers and publishers and hundreds of thousands of fans look forward to the products we distribute. It takes their responsibility very seriously. I actually have had some direct communication with Steve Geppi over the last couple of weeks, and I can tell you he is sincerely concerned, and he wants to try to restore business, and he takes the responsibility very seriously. I believe he's going to do whatever he can to restore things. That said, they do need a lot better comics from Marvel and DC and consistent publishing, and it's a publishing problem more than it's a distribution problem. But Steve Geppi does love comic books, and he is going to try and make a go of it. So here Steve explains that last week they held vendor payments to allow for careful analysis of information from the industry, from our business, and the effects of COVID-19. We assure you that we would communicate our revised payment schedule when we were able. I appreciate your patience and many supportive messages I've received this week. Yeah. It's madness over there, man. I'm telling you. All right. So working with what we know today, the outline of vendor payments from Diamond Comic Distributors and Diamond Book Distributors. Now, this is a payment schedule, and I'm surprised Peter didn't throw up a question mark about this. I have a question mark about this. So Diamond Comic Distributors is a different business entity. It's a different corporation than Diamond Book Distributors. But this is a combined payment schedule that basically Steve Geppi is saying, well, we're going to make these payments on this schedule. And they're two separate business entities. So, they have very different ways of operating. Diamond Comic Distributors and Diamond Book Distributors are different. Diamond Comic Distributors buys comic books on a non-returnable basis from publishers. It commits to paying for them. And Diamond Book Distributors is a book distributor that basically buys its product on a returnable basis, and it's just getting the books out to the stores, and then the stores pay for what they sell. So they're two different companies. Some of the vendors, I'm sure, are the same, like some of the publishers are the same, but they're very different business models. But they're still moving books, but one is basically the returnable company, one is the non-returnable company. So I don't know if Steve merged the companies. It's just a little odd that it'd be like if you were in 3 or 4 different businesses, for the payment schedule to be merged like this is a little unusual. So it makes me think that based on this schedule, that actually Diamond will be paying on this schedule 100%. I don't think they're going to miss any of these payments. So that's a positive. It feels to me like they might have gotten some outside financing arrangement to make sure that whatever was outstanding is going to be taken care of. And Diamond, I've said this on other videos, Diamond has always paid 100% of every invoice on time and early at a discount if you gave them an extra discount fee. They financed publishers for decades. So it's extremely unusual for them to be late on anything. So here's their payment schedule. Beginning this week of April 6th, you'll receive 25% of the weekly amount due under your contract terms. So that is to say that, let's say your company was owed $10,000 by Diamond Comic Distributors to be paid this week, April 6th, you'd get $2,500 of that $10,000 for what you already delivered. Again, it's important to remember, this is not for April's comics. This is for comics from March and potentially February, depending on what the payment schedules were. So this is because of business interruption, which could be devastating. I mean, just devastating for any business. Even if your business is going along smoothly, but if for 3 weeks or 4 weeks it gets thrown off track, especially if you're a small company, but not in just the case of small companies, but particularly if you're a small company, business interruption can kill the business. So 25%. Okay, so each subsequent week you'll receive 25% of that week's balance due. Okay, so then you're going to continue to receive these 25% a week payments, but that's for following weeks. So if you were owed money to be paid April 6th, you get 25% of that money. If you were owed money to be paid the week of April 13th, you get 25% of that money. So it's not going to be, and this makes sense for the book trade part. So it's not going to be that, let's say Diamond owed me $100,000 for comics shipped in March. What Diamond would say is like, all right, Adam, here, I'm going to give you $25,000 right now. But then unless they owed me more for another week in March, I would not be getting more money right away for that other payment in March. So what they're doing is they're going to pay 25 cents on the dollar of everything that's already been delivered and is owed to Diamond prior to the shutdown at Diamond, prior to their announcement of the shutdown. So the reduced payment schedule is going to continue for 6 weeks. All right, so for 6 weeks, they're going to have a reduced payment schedule, and the remaining 75% due in each of those weeks being deferred. With the remaining 75% due being deferred. So let's say they owed me $10,000 a week over the next 6 weeks. They'd be paying me 25 cents on the dollar. Now, why would a publisher continue to give them books if they are owed money and they consistently aren't getting paid the full amount? Well, because these are books that are already distributed. So it's not like people aren't going to take the money. So if Diamond owed you whatever it is, $500,000, and they're like, look, I'm going to give you 25% here and 25% there. And then, you'll get 25% of the $500,000, which would be $125,000. And then they're offering and saying, hey, we're going to pay that remaining 75% due following the 6-week period. They'll begin payment of the deferred balance in equal payments over a 13-week period, which is a little more than 3 months. So that would mean if prior to Diamond's stoppage and their announcement that they're going to hold payments, if you were owed $100,000 by Diamond, they're essentially saying, look, we're going to pay you $25,000 right away, or when the $100,000 was due, 25%. And then the balance, they will break up over 13 weeks and pay you even amounts of what they owe you for the full balance over that 13 weeks, which is basically 3 months, after 6 weeks. So this is structured very deliberately. I'm assuming, okay. So I'm assuming that, this is something that they already arranged financing for to be able to handle. This also has some assumptions probably of stores being back in business at least after 6 weeks, at least the bookstore side, or that they'll be able to expand maybe the bookstore side into comic book stores. And Jeppy continues here, while we understand that this will have significant impact on everyone and the situation could change, we also recognize that our world is in the midst of an unprecedented crisis and aggressive action is necessary. In addition to the steps outlined above, our leadership team is accepting a 50% salary cut. Landlords have agreed to rent deferrals, and various other providers of professional services have agreed to defer their payments. Never before have we experienced such a test of our resolve and a demonstration of our commitment to each other. This is a deal that Marvel and DC 1000% have signed off on. And they're kind of all that matters in terms of the volume that the comic distributor and the book distributor are doing. Now more than ever, we need to come together in support of one another, knowing that these difficult decisions allow us to emerge from this trying time and thrive once again. So this is their plan. So basically, this should give them enough time to pay these outstanding bills, at least from March. Peter's question is a really good one. A question to Peter would be like, look, are you going to continue to offer comic books to Diamond, not knowing if they're going to be able to distribute them or not? Meaning Diamond is be financially successful. Diamond can pay all their bills. They can arrange special financing. They can do all that stuff. But are they going to have stores that are willing to buy comic books on a non-returnable basis? And what's that going to be? What's going to happen with that? To me, look, what I actually told Steve Geppi, and I would continue to believe this, is the only way this makes sense, the comic book market makes sense, is returnable distribution. Non-returnable distribution doesn't make any sense. And the reason why non-returnable distribution doesn't make sense anymore is because publishers violated the trust of the retail stores and the fans, but the retail stores, because that's who they had to deal with to buy comics non-returnable. So if you know that you're going to buy comics on a Wednesday and you're going to sell some of them, but whatever doesn't sell is basically garbage, there isn't really back issue interest in comics anymore, then they need to adjust for that. It used to be like in the 1980s when the comic book store market started, publishers had ongoing schedules. They would launch a new title like G.I. Joe. They would launch a new title like Alpha Flight at Marvel. But that title would be understood that title would probably go on for a couple of hundred issues, at least 10 years. So to buy extra copies of Alpha Flight number 1, number 2, number 3, the retailer knew, those books would retail for 65 cents. They knew they were buying them for like 32 cents. Sometimes they're buying them as little as 30 cents. And they knew they could sell them as a back issue for $1, even if it wasn't a hit. Like Alpha Flight number 6, whatever. You'd be able to sell, if you had 10 extra copies, you could sell those extra copies over time at least $1. That's 3 times the cost. It doesn't exist that way anymore. Comics are so freaking expensive. There's really no secondary market for most new comics that are published. So how the hell is a retailer supposed to buy these new comics, know that, look, there probably aren't going to be back issues. There's digital they have to compete with. There's trade paperbacks they have to compete with. There's stolen digital copies they have to compete with. And there's also a lack of enthusiasm because too much of comic books has become politics and scams at the big companies. There are still some good comics that get made, but it's not with any kind of sensible or coherent publishing schedule. It's a major loss. Standards have gone incredibly way down. So there's no way to turn a retail store, a non-returnable retail store, into a substantial success, into a real business. There used to be people opening chains of comic book stores, not like 1,000-person chains, but 5 location chains, 7 location chains. People would expand, they would have success. There was a lot of business to be done back in the day because people could rely on the product. If you can't rely on the product, there's nothing you can do as a retailer to build a business. And it's really too bad that trust has been violated like that by the publishers. And honestly, that is not Diamond's fault. It's nothing Diamond can do anything about. Diamond can only sell the product that they're given. They can't refuse anything from Marvel Comics. They can't say, hey, we don't want these Marvel comics, or we think this comic from DC is too woke, or why have you made these changes to Catwoman? They can have conversations about creative, but basically they really don't have any leverage over the publishers to produce the kind of comics that the publishers need to produce to be able to keep their promises to the retailers in the market. So that's what I'm expecting to see. I'm expecting to see, and maybe this is why Peter hasn't heard about updates about future purchase orders. Maybe it's going to be a necessity. Maybe it'll be next week that Diamond announces, and I wouldn't be surprised that all non-returnable purchase orders have been converted to returnable, and the publisher has the right to not fulfill them, or the publisher may have the right to partially fill them. But I would assume the next thing Diamond's going to drop on people is like, look, you're now returnable. You're going to help make comic book stores effective as a publisher. You're going to help them be good businesses where they can get stuff in and know that they can make money off of it. Comic books should not be perishable, more perishable than an apple, where like, all right, well, the apple was sitting around for a day or two, or a banana. It shouldn't be like you got 2 bananas and now they're going to be spoiled. You got to throw them away. So in any case, that's what I think we're going to hear next from Diamond. That would be my speculation. I don't have inside information on it. I'm just speculating. They got to offer returnability to pending purchase orders. And I think you'll see announcements like that probably next week. And I would say by the week after, it'll be announced that all new purchase orders, all new solicitations to Diamond are going to be for returnable products. And I don't expect that the discounts for publishers are going to get any better either. They're going to have to stay what they are. And I don't know how they can afford to distribute comic books with less than a $5 retail, because, they get in 10 copies. There's a lot of physical handling of the books, just distribution details. In any case, be sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications. Keep an eye out for College of the Dead. This is a really successful campaign. I'm really happy with how it came out. The book is completely finished. It ships June 2020, so in just a couple months. And I will have other comics that come, but I'm really excited about this one. The link in the description is right there. I will see you again soon with another video, and if I don't see you, we'll miss you.